I would advise all younger people to, if they are with an employer that offers any kind of savings program, a 401k, an IRA, to jump right in it and learn at a very young age to pay yourself first, because after a while you really don't miss the money.
The other thing I would suggest is you don't get bogged down in debt. You don't have a lot of credit card debt, and you discipline yourself to not spend more money than you make.
Am I comfortable with the financial planning I've done? The answer would be yes and no. No in the sense that I really didn't do any financial planning, and yes in that my husband did most of the financial planning, and it turned out to be good, which was a pleasant surprise.
No matter what we do, we really have to look at ourselves as spiritual beings who not only live with our finances, but we have to have a hopeful attitude and not look at this future as dismal and, oh my goodness, what's happening with our economy and there's so much fear out there in the world. What we really need to do is to have an attitude of hope and try and be less anxious, because that produces depression, and depression in turn makes kind of a snowball effect in all aspects of our life, including finances, which might cloud our judgment.
Hello, I'm Ann Hall. Welcome to Mature Living, a program that features topics of interest for older adults. On today's show, we'll explore the importance of sound financial management for ourselves as well as for the individuals in our care. Joining me for the first part of today's discussion is Bill Vaughn, a former staffer of a House of Representatives Medicare committee. He now works with the county's Virginia Insurance Counseling and Assistance Program. Also joining us for the first part of today's discussion is Tom West, Senior Associate with Signature Estate and Investment Advisors. Tom, let's start with you. How do you know how much money you should save, and does age play a role in planning?
Well, one of the ways that I always try to describe to people how to know how much money to save is really to start with getting a sense of what your projected expenses might be. Because in the end, saving really needs to be targeted to be able to help support a particular draw to supplement lifestyle and expenses. So I always start with how much is it that we think that we're going to be spending. One of the things to figure out next is, are there guaranteed sources of income that we know can contribute to the household expenses? Is there pension? Are there Social Security? In Fairfax County, we have a lot of military retirees and federal retirees that have some pretty significant fixed income. The answer to the question on how much to save is really how much do we need to be able to fill in the gap between what our guaranteed income is able to do supporting our projected expenses.
When planning for retirement, what are the questions you need to ask yourself and your family?
Well, I think the big thing to think introspectively about for yourself and your family is, what are the different jobs, what are the different responsibilities of my money, my different investment accounts? Are they supposed to be providing some liquidity to be able to give us an ability to pay for unforeseen expenses? Are investments supposed to be generating income to support cash flow needs? Or are they to be invested over a longer period of time in a way that would be able to beat inflation or to be able to make a nest egg grow? Those three things, liquidity, provision of income, or ability to grow over time, those are really the three main jobs of money, and I always like to tell my clients to have a pretty good understanding of what the role of a particular investment account might be. That's a good place to start.
Let's consider those who have saved over their lifetime and perhaps they've amassed a good bit of money. How do they decide what to invest in?
Well, I think again, we have to decide and identify what specifically the job of the money is. I sometimes will recommend to my clients to be able to take whatever their investment statement is and to be able to write in like a Sharpie marker right across the top what the job of the account is and being able to describe that in English. So for example, if somebody has an IRA or a 401k and this account's job is to be providing me $3,000 of income coming into my checking account every year, that should be able to give us some pretty good guidance in terms of how to invest. If we identify what the specific responsibility of the money is in language that we can all understand, I think that it gives professionals and family members sort of better guidance in terms of how to make decisions among the different array of investment choices.
How do you know if you're on track? And when would you know if you need the help of a financial professional?
Well, it's a great question. I think that the first piece is what you're looking for is some confidence to be able to make up the cash flow gap. Imagine that it's a subtraction problem. How much you spend minus how much you earn in fixed income, whatever that difference is, well, that's generally speaking the job of the money. How you know you're on track is the available savings that you have, is that sufficient to be able to confidently be able to make up that cash flow gap from when you retire through the rest of your life? I always think that it's important to plan on an extended longevity. You want to make sure that you've got some confidence that your money's going to last.
When you retire, can you just sit back and relax, or do you have to actively manage your finances? How proactive do retirees need to be?
Oh, that's a really important question. For a lot of Fairfax County and Northern Virginia retirees, particularly those that have some relatively comfortable fixed income in retirement, there can be a tendency where I've made it and you sort of set it and forget it. My attitude is always one where people need to be evaluating two different things. First off, the financial needs and the cash flow needs in the household, they really don't stay the same over time. Different things come up. There might be some support for children. There might be a change in health that requires different responsibilities for our money. So we need to be constantly evaluating ourselves. Is the role of money in my life and the way that it's serving my goals, is that changing? And for most of us it does. We don't have the same set of priorities and circumstances year over year. Those change. The second thing is being able to adapt to whatever the different markets are giving us. So right now, for example, with interest rates so low, we're not able to depend on different kinds of investments like bonds to serve in the same way that they might have in a portfolio 5 to 10 years ago. So in that respect, I think that constant monitoring of your own situation and then what different markets are able to provide, those are the two things that I believe retirees really need to stay vigilant on, regardless of their level of comfort with fixed income.
Health is a big consideration for older adults. What plans do you need to have in place to prepare for the physical and mental challenges that may lie ahead? And is long-term care insurance a part of this planning?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that there's two different ways to think of the possible threat and impact of long-term care. And one of them is financial and the other one has to do with decision making. Let me do the last one first. For a lot of families where you have maybe a primary financial decision maker in the house, if that individual is less able to make effective decisions depending on the path that's ahead of them because of a healthcare issue, I think that there needs to be some specifically articulated contingency plans inside the family. Is a spouse or an adult child or a professional, are they in place to be able to help make decisions through what might be a challenging time? The second aspect is the financial aspect. Long-term care expenses, as you know, in Fairfax County can be quite expensive. I regularly serve clients that are spending $50,000, $100,000, $150,000 a year or more. And I always like to have, for people planning ahead, a game plan. In the event that we need to have to go out of pocket for some different type of expenses, what are the different pockets of money that we might need to rely on? Is it something that we would be taking a look at cash reserves or retirement accounts or whatnot? So it's a combination of both. How are we going to make a decision in a potential challenging situation? And then what are the actual tactical decisions that we have to make in terms of which pots of money to be able to use to fund those kind of expenses?
How do you prepare for the time when you are no longer able to actively manage your finances?
Well, I think it's going to be different for different people, but mostly I think it has to do with having an honest conversation that maybe I might not be able to make decisions in the future the same way that I am right now. There's usually two different places to start. The first one is having a pretty good capture of what your financial situation is before anything happens. A lot of times when I'm assisting clients that have to assume some responsibility of making decisions for a family member that's not able to for themselves anymore, a place to start always is, well, where's all the money? How are things, how is cash flow coming in and out? And a lot of times that's a challenge because the person that might need help wasn't organized in the way that they have described their financial situation to begin with. So you always want to start with knowing where everything is. The second thing is to have a conversation with whoever those different contingent decision makers might be, making sure that they have the ability to access the different accounts, to be able to use things like powers of attorney or trust documents. Those are places that, you know, somebody needs legal authority to be able to make decisions on behalf of somebody else. Those are the two things to start with, making sure that you have organized information and making sure that you've got legal ability to make decisions for somebody else.
Tom, you provided us with so much great information. As we close our conversation with you, how do you choose an advisor? How do you navigate those waters?
Well, financial advice is an industry where there's lots of different ways that people serve clients. I would always start with making sure that the advisor has the conversation has three things. The first one is, can you communicate well with your advisor? Are you comfortable being able to share not just your financial circumstances, but the way that you really consider goals and priorities in your life? And is that advisor able to be literate and supportive of those and to be able to modify what kind of recommendations there are based on the input that you give them? The second thing is going to be making sure that the advisor has the appropriate amount of expertise that is germane to your particular situation. So for example, somebody that might be trained on how to save for retirement might not have the expertise to really guide families on how to pay for healthcare costs, for example. Different set of expertise. So make sure that the advisor that you're seeking has expertise in your particular area. And then the last one, always have a conversation where you understand exactly how the advisor is compensated. My industry has a lot of different business models and a lot of different ways that we get paid. I think that it's really important to understand specifically how is it that you get paid and how am I able to value the service that you're able to give me. I think if those three things are covered regularly, you'll have a good shot with a good advisor.
Thanks so much for joining us, Tom. Another part of sound financial management is managing our expenses wisely. For many, Medicare's out-of-pocket costs can become very expensive during retirement, and this often results in an unexpected drain on people's income. Bill, let's bring you into the conversation. Tell us what Medicare out-of-pocket costs are.
Well, first of all, I think Medicare is a great program for acute care illnesses, but you do have to plan for a lot of out-of-pocket expenses because there's a lot of things Medicare doesn't cover, and as in your earlier working years insurance, there are deductibles and co-pays, and then there's premiums that you have to pay in lots of parts of Medicare. So it's kind of estimated that per person, and for a couple you double this, for a person you're looking at about $7,100 a year in medical expenses. The big issue is while Medicare is great on hospitals and doctors and stuff, it's terrible when it comes to just getting old and needing help in what we used to call an old folks home,
Right.
or a nursing home where you don't need skilled help. It doesn't do anything for helping a demented person with dementia, Alzheimer's, and those can cost tens of thousands of dollars a year that Medicare doesn't cover.
Is there anything people can do to defray these costs?
Other than picking parents with good, healthy DNA, yes, shop. Shop, and get the right kind of insurance. And let's say you're picking a Part D drug plan, make sure it covers your drugs, and then check it each year because these plans can change from year to year. And there's a study out that the average senior could save an average of about $350 a year, $1 a day, if they picked the plan that was best economically for them. Or if you pick a Medigap plan that fills in some of the gaps in Medicare. Go with the lowest cost one is our advice, because all of these plans are modeled, they cover the same things. And all you're buying in some cases is extra advertising. So you can save money on Medigap policies. Or if you're interested in managed care, there's 14 companies selling in our county. Shop among them. You go on the Medicare.gov website and you put in your zip code, and they will rank these different plans, the drug plans, the managed care plans, from lowest cost to highest. Take a look at the lower cost ones. Don't jump to the one you saw advertised on TV last night.
Well, how much do Medicare beneficiaries spend on these costs each year? You mentioned the $7,100 fee.
Easily $7,100. For example, okay, that doesn't cover this long-term care. It doesn't cover hearing aids. It covers cataract surgery, Medicare does. But the fact that I'm getting older and need stronger glasses, routine eye care doesn't cover. Cleaning your teeth doesn't cover. So those kind of expenses you got to plan for. But then you have these deductibles and copays, and the Medicare hospital benefit is very good, but you owe the first day's cost in a hospital, which is the average cost of a hospital stay in the United States, $1,260.
Wow.
And if you're really unlucky, that could happen to you 4 or 5 times during the year, $5,000. That's why a lot of people buy what are called Medigap, or Medicare supplement policies, to fill in these gaps in Medicare, to protect yourself from these huge out-of-pocket expenses.
Interesting. So we were talking about costs. What can people do if they're concerned about a cost that doesn't look legitimate?
Oh, for gosh sakes, report it. There is some fraud, and it's throughout the healthcare system. It's not just Medicare. And some politicians have said it's at the $500 billion level. That's ridiculous. There is a problem with fraud. Every 3 months you'll get a statement from Medicare of all the charges and bills paid in your name and under your Medicare number. Check it, look at it. If you see an MRI there for $800 and all you had was a $35 x-ray, call your doctor. Maybe somebody made an innocent mistake.
Right.
But if this is a pattern of fraud, it's driving up taxes on our kids who help pay for this program. It's driving up premiums that we have to pay.
Thanks to Tom and Bill for joining us today, and thank you for offering such important information on sound financial management. Stay tuned to Mature Living. In our next segment, we'll focus on caregivers and discuss ways to protect the income and assets for those in their care. We'll be right back. Joining us for the second part of today's discussion is Ed Zetlin, attorney with Edward Zetlin Law Offices. He specializes in estate planning, special needs planning, guardianship, and long-term care planning. Also with us is Tara Turner, director of a care management practice called ElderLink. Tara, we'll start with you. What are some of the signs that a family member may notice indicating that a loved one is having difficulty managing their finances?
Sure. You may notice things like paper strewn across the dining room table. Perhaps there's pieces of mail that haven't even been opened yet, or maybe they have been opened but they haven't been dealt with. You may be seeing overdraft from an account, or perhaps bills that you're seeing late notices for. Those are all things to look for.
Interesting. Many people are very private about their finances, and sometimes that has to do with not wanting to share with other family members. So when a family member is concerned about another family member having difficulty managing their money, seeing things similar to what you described, how should that family member approach the person who's having problems?
Absolutely. It's a touchy subject, and you have to remember that giving your finances over to somebody can feel like a real loss of independence. So I would really recommend approaching somebody with compassion and understanding and empathy, putting yourself in their shoes and understanding that this is not an easy thing to admit that there might be a problem with. So really listening to that person and finding out if they recognize that there is an issue, sitting down and talking through what's going on and what you're noticing with them, and really just focusing on how they feel about that, and if they think there may be a problem, what the repercussions of that could be.
Tara, when is it time to consider calling a care management agency?
When somebody recognizes that there's a problem on some kind of level, they may be willing to have somebody come in and maybe start small. Maybe they would allow somebody to come in and just help them with organization. Taking a look at the bills, finding a way to organize them so that maybe they could better manage their bills, or perhaps going in and creating a budget for somebody. Could lead to other things that you could help with bill paying, but really starting small and what the client is comfortable with.
Excellent. I understand that ElderLink offers some free consultation to caregivers, and a lot of this has to do with discussing the concerns that we've just mentioned. Could you tell us a little bit more about the consultation?
Yes, we do. We, part of our mission is to help older adults remain independent as long as they can safely do so. And so part of that is supporting caregivers and helping them with that. So ElderLink does offer a 1-hour free consultation, either face-to-face or over the phone. This is certainly an issue that would be, a great topic to talk about.
Very good, thank you.
Sure.
Ed, your practice specializes in establishing and managing fiduciary relationships to help people manage their finances. Can you tell us a little bit more about what a fiduciary is and about different types of fiduciaries?
Yes. So a fiduciary is where one individual is appointed, we'll talk about how they're appointed, who has the responsibility for managing the income and assets of another person who we would call the beneficiary. So I like to think of fiduciaries of two types. One is they can be court appointed. So a guardian or a conservator are appointed by a court, and they are fiduciaries for the money and the assets that they manage for the incapacitated person. On the other hand, there can be voluntary appointment of a fiduciary. So when someone does a power of attorney, they appoint someone who will be a fiduciary for them. The agent will be the fiduciary. Or if they're doing a trust, they'll appoint a successor trustee who will be that fiduciary.
So when does a person need a fiduciary?
Well, the fiduciary would probably begin to act when the person themselves are not able to act for themselves. Oftentimes, with regard to a power of attorney, we appoint someone immediately, but the person will continue to act for themselves, do all of their banking, but there may come a time when it becomes apparent that they're really not able to do it, and then you would want the agent to step in and act for that person.
Right, so the agent's sort of watching the situation,
Yeah.
and makes sense. So who generally serves as a fiduciary, and what are the main duties? You mentioned some of them, but...
Well, with outside of the court-appointed appointments,
right.
A person can pick somebody to be an agent under a power of attorney or a trustee. The main qualification is you want to have somebody who wants to do it, is willing to be the agent, is going to be available to do the tasks when the time comes, and has, you know, a certain amount of knowledge with regard to you, your finances, and what you would want or not want.
Is that generally a family member?
It can be a family member, often is a family member. You can also point, there are professional fiduciaries that will step in, banks, sometimes attorneys, other people who will perform that kind of task. So there's no specific criteria with regard to who can be a fiduciary.
So what are some of the things that can go wrong with the fiduciary relationship, and what should we watch out for?
Right. Well, one of the issues, particularly when you're dealing with a family member who becomes a fiduciary for another family member, is all of a sudden what was everything that was happening jointly as a family now needs to be separated out. So for instance, if someone is appointed a conservator for their spouse by the court, they really do have to separate things that are being spent on for the other spouse, the incapacitated spouse, because there's going to be required a court accounting as to how the money is being spent. So that's going to require the person to really separate out finances as to what is that person's income and assets and what's being spent for them.
I see. So do you have any tips on how to manage a fiduciary?
I think number one is you want to keep very careful records. So that becomes a very important part. You want to separate out your resources, the agent or the trustee's resources, from the person that you are a fiduciary for. One other point I want to make sure is that fiduciaries actually have a fiduciary duty to act for the beneficiary. They cannot act for themselves. Their job is to always act in the interest of the beneficiary. So there really is a legal duty there that requires them to act in a particular way.
Thank you. Ed and Tara, thank you so much for sharing all this important information. And thank you, our viewing audience, for watching this edition of Mature Living. I'm Ann Hall. We'll see you next time.